Just slightly closer to the mic. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder on this bright, windy November Sunday. Fall is truly here with its time change and earlier evenings and pandemic-adjusted holiday events. My name is Diana Maiden, and I'll be the worship leader for today's service. We welcome all at the Unitarian Universalist Church. If you are a new visitor, please email our office manager, Amy Sen, and let us know you found us. You'll find Amy's email in the Zoom chat. Our church website also has a great deal of information about the church and its activities. Now, please ensure that your microphones are muted and join us for worship.
Well, good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. It's been an eventful couple of weeks since the last time I was able to worship with you all. So really nice to be with you. And I welcome you to hear these words of invocation from yoga instructor and animal rights activist Sweet Home Teacup, who wrote, quote, "May we recognize and abandon the familiar attitudes and practices that do not serve the whole. We are who we are, and we have the opportunity to be who we want to be, to create a new inheritance for the future. May our thoughts, words, and actions in our daily lives assist in dismantling paradigms of oppression and suffering. May we give thanks for our individual place in time and space, to our families and our relationships that touch and change us. May we give thanks to the wise teachers who help us remember how to be and the chance to make it so. Underneath and within these stories and histories is our humanity. Being human means we are of this earth. We are these waters. We are fire and atmosphere. We are the sun and the moon and the stars. We are all that we see, and the wisdom is revealed by looking in between. Unquote. May it be so. Ashe.
If you have a personal chalice or candle near your computer,
come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound.
if you have a personal chalice or candle near your computer, please get ready to light it. We invite you to type into the chat box where your chalice is lit, the street or the neighborhood or what city, if you are joining us from outside of Boulder County. Now, I'd like to introduce the Reverend Emily Conger, our chalice lighter for today.
Thank you so much, Diana. My name is the Reverend Emily Conger, recently ordained by this congregation as well as the Boulder Valley UU Fellowship. It has been a joy and a pleasure to be on this journey toward ordination with you. I'm so grateful to all of you. I am also grateful to serve as your minister for the Longmont Unitarian Universalist Presence. Years ago, as a congregation, you decided that you wanted to expand the ways and places of worshiping and gathering together. You took a risk and partnered with others to imagine what might be possible. And from there, the Longmont Unitarian Universalist Presence was formed. The Loop, as we call it, is an emerging ministry of the UU Church of Boulder and the Boulder Valley UU Fellowship. These three ministries work in partnership to support the spiritual needs of people all over Boulder County. Together, we live into a spirit of abundance and possibility. The Loop seeks to cultivate spiritually mature Unitarian Universalists in innovative ways. We are primarily based in Longmont, and we're a ministry that is not bound by geography. We offer many opportunities for gathering and deepening, including the very first ongoing Unitarian Universalist dinner church, as well as other groups serving elders and parents of preschoolers. Dinner church is a meal and a worship service that are woven together in order to engage our whole selves in participatory worship. We feed bodies and spirits through food and ritual. The Loop leverages ancient spiritual technology with an accessible and modern feel. If you are seeking nourishment and connection, join us. If you're seeking embodiment and engagement, join us. If you're seeking reverence and play, join us. And if you're just curious, join us. Come to be fed, nourished, transformed, and loved in beloved community. The Loop is here to serve all who are seeking. This morning, I will light the Loop's chalice, whose rings symbolize widening circles of inclusion. May we together light our chalices for an expansive vision of Unitarian Universalism and the continued work of imagining what might be possible together. Thank you.
We now invite all those gathered in our various locations to join together in fellowship and community as we all say aloud our congregation's covenant. The words are in your online order of service and on the screen. We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it.
Thank you, everybody. Let's pause for a moment before we move into our full service to just check in with each other. In this deep connection with all of life, let us tune into our own joys and concerns. Think about what is on your mind and in your heart today. And in the quiet of your own thoughts, I invite you to lift up all that weighs on you, anxieties, grief, worry and pain, whatever it is. Let us hold this and each other in beloved silence. And let us also turn our minds and hearts to those we love, holding them with love, acknowledging their painful challenges and sufferings. And I invite you now, as you're willing and able, to share your concerns and sorrows and anxieties with your beloved community in the chat box. I will lift up some of them to name. I know there's still a lot of anxiety in our system about elections and transfers of power. I know we are full with concerns for friends, near and far. We have still, although sometimes it's easy to forget, a pandemic raging through our land, growing by the day, and we know there's much concern for those who already have or are still waiting on diagnosis of COVID. And of course, I see notes about changes of holiday plans, rituals, and traditions we've counted on for decades, things that just always happen that won't be able to happen this year. And I'm with you all in those impossible moments. Natural disasters, Central Americans facing another hurricane, friends and loved ones traveling, our governor, our superintendents of schools who are in impossible situations, our teachers and frontline first responders who continue to put their own lives at risk to care for ours. Janet and Bob Evans hold up their daughter Carla, who will have surgery tomorrow, and I know we all join them in holding her and that family. Keep posting as you wish. I think it's just healing to share these things at some level with our community of love and support, so keep them coming. But we also offer love and witness for the joys and celebrations that we're holding. I know that there's some of that still going on in this life too. Transitions of power come to mind again here. So I invite you also in that chat box to share that which is lighting you on fire with love and hope and happiness, so that we too can feel some of that with you today. I lift up gratitude, blessings of health, the slow but steady results coming in from the election, those of us quarantining and doing the best we can for everyone else. Elliot, who'll be coming home soon to Jim and Whitney. Yes, Ingrid, we can never bring her name up here too often. Ingrid and her whole family, we hold you with joy and concern and love. We have some birthdays in the family. It's nice to see. I know that list will continue to grow, so keep reading it and let that smile creep across your face larger and larger as you do. I know that's happening to me. Jim starting a new job. For all these blessings and concerns, as well as those we know that remain silently on our hearts, not yet ready to be spoken, we hold this compassionate space with love. And I thank you for all the ways that you continue to bless each other. Amen and Ashe. Diana, if you'd like to read those words.
Yes, our reading today is by President Barack Obama. What a vindication of the belief that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. What a reminder of what Bobby Kennedy once said about how small actions can be like pebbles being thrown into a still lake, and ripples of hope cascade outwards and change the world.
I dreamed of rain and the rains came, soft and easy, sweet and clear. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, soft and easy, sweet and clear. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of summer and the winds changed, and the green was easy and the rivers ran clear. I dreamed of summer and the winds changed, and peace spread over the land. And the flowers bloom in the desert, and the air is fresh and clear. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of freedom and the moon rose, and the way was easy and the path was clear. I dreamed of freedom and the moon rose, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of freedom and the moon rose, and the way was easy and the path was clear. I dreamed of freedom and the moon rose, and peace spread over the land. And the guardian stars are shining, and the night is bright and clear. I dreamed of freedom and the moon rose, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of heaven and the earth sang, and the sound was easy and the song was clear. I dreamed of heaven and the earth sang, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of heaven and the earth sang, and the sound was easy and the song was clear. I dreamed of heaven and the earth sang, and peace spread over the land. And the ancient pain is forgotten, and the Father's debts are clear. I dreamed of heaven and the earth sang, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, soft and easy, sweet and clear. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, soft and easy, sweet and clear. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. And the flowers bloom in the desert, and the air is fresh and clear. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of rain and the rains came.
Beautiful. Thank you. A few years ago, I was vacationing with my wife and daughter in an amazing jungle beach town in Mexico called Yalapa. While it's possible to drive to Yalapa, it involves a terrible and long drive that takes 12 hours or so through a jungle. So almost everyone and everything comes by boat, small boats called pangas, which keeps it small and for the most part unspoiled by people like me coming to visit. Yalapa is basically a crescent shape of beautiful white sand beach jutting out of a thick green jungle. And so most of the action is on the beach side. My family and I sat on the beach for most of our days there and had lots of time to watch the local village and tourist life unfold and interact. My daughter got to know the local giant iguana that happily posed with her for photos. People offered us local handicrafts for sale, and the waves came one after the other endlessly. It was a simple life. One afternoon, I watched with curiosity as 3 young men with big shovels came down to the beach. And I'm not talking about the kind of shovel you play in the sand with, but rather long metal shovels. And it quickly became clear what they were planning on doing. On the other side of our perfect white crescent sand beach, from those never-ending perfect waves, was a not so perfect lake of stagnant water that had collected at the terminus of a river that came out of the jungle but no longer connected all the way to the ocean. In truth, this stagnant water was at least 200 feet, perhaps more, short of connecting to the ocean, which meant there was a lot of sand between the stagnant water and the ocean. What could these 3 men with shovels think they could do about it, unless they were the first wave of 1,000 more men with shovels? So I watched with comic interest as these 3 men began digging a very thin waterway from the stagnant water across the beach. It was not quick work, but within an hour or 2, they had indeed reached almost all the way to the ocean. But the waterway they had constructed was so ridiculously thin that it looked as if it would take months to drain the stagnant water. With not so much as a nod to what they had done, they made the final scoop, connecting the 2 points of water, and with a whimper, a little trickle began to run from one point to the other. And with that, the 3 men turned and left. How was that worth their time? I wondered to myself, and put my nose back in the book I was reading. A few minutes later, I looked up and couldn't believe my eyes. Where just minutes ago there had been a pathetic little line of water, there was now a rushing current, at least 2 feet thick, flowing more quickly by the second. And in fact, the flowing water was pulling more and more sand down from the sides of its banks as it flowed, eroding the sand on both sides in a rapid, cascading fashion that seemed to feed on itself, carving out a fast-growing river, which not 10 minutes later was running so rapidly and strong, now more than 8 to 10 feet wide all the way down its lengths, that I was honestly afraid to try and cross it. And within an hour, the stagnant pond had drained, and the river flowed with a mighty force into the ocean once again. And I knew, even in that moment, that I had just seen something that I would one day preach about. Because honestly, short of the video we are about to watch together, it's the most perfect metaphor I have ever seen for how an individual or small group can make cascading large-scale change happen just by exerting a little pressure in the right place. But let's hold that thought for just a moment, and we're going to watch a little video together about how wolves change rivers.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years. That the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds, of migratory birds, started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed, more pools formed, more riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
So much better than the sound of my dog when he barks. I just love that story, and I really wanted to share it with you all right now. I just find it extremely inspirational. The wolves changed the rivers. It's an amazingly powerful little story about change. And growing up, that's not how I thought change worked. That one small element in a massive system like Yellowstone could be changed, and that this small change alone, exerting its pressure over time, could be enough to slowly bring about powerful, wide-scale change to that system. To the contrary, I was raised on romantic stories of giant spasms of history, revolutions, paradigm shifting, cataclysmic moments of instant change. And for sure, that kind of change does occur, but it's easy to let ourselves off the hook for being responsible for change when that's the only way we imagine it happening. So the next question this raised for me was, what can I do with my life that's similar? How can I exert my pressure into the larger system and start a cascading change like those wolves? Over the years, as I have contemplated and studied this question, I've found the work of philosopher, inventor, environmentalist, and all-around genius Buckminster Fuller to be the most useful. Now, most of you probably know Bucky's work from the giant geodesic dome in Epcot Center, or perhaps from one of his other amazing inventions. His genius took him in many directions. And at the height of World War II, in fact, the Navy came to him desperate for his help to solve a major technical problem they were up against. At that time, in order to keep up with the competition, Navy ships were growing astronomically in size and weight with every iteration. And so their steering mechanisms were beginning to require more power to turn their rudders than their engines could produce. It was a massive issue, and Bucky solved it simply and brilliantly with something called a trim tab. A trim tab is a less than foot-long piece of metal that he had them connect to the ship's rudder with a flexible hinge. As an engine's hydraulics force the trim tab into the path of the oncoming water, the pressure that's generated against the trim tab assists the rudder in making its turn. It doesn't require any more engine power. It actually harnesses the force exerted against it and transfers that energy towards its own objective. That is a nifty piece of engineering and a hell of a metaphor for change. While this tiny invention is not as well known as much of his work, it left a very deep impression on the man himself. And in an interview towards the end of his life in 1972, Bucky said the following about it, quote, "Something hit me very hard once, thinking about what one little person could do. Think of the Queen Mary. The whole ship goes by and then comes the rudder. And there's a tiny thing at the edge of the rudder called a trim tab. It's a miniature rudder. Just moving the little trim tab builds a low pressure that pulls the rudder around. It takes almost no effort at all. So I said that the little individual can be a trim tab. Society thinks it's going right by you, that it's left you altogether. But if you're doing dynamic things mentally, the fact is that you can just put your foot out like that and the whole big ship of state's going to go. So I said, call me trim tab, unquote. And I believe that quote is actually on his grave. Call me trim tab. And I just love that image of sticking your foot out and changing the course of history with its drag. But I want to drill down a little deeper here also and escape the metaphorical for the practical, so we can really have a good sense of how we, ourselves, can actually do this. Because you may not walk around thinking about it, but like those wolves, you too are at the top of some very important food chains, and you too can make cascading change. And to explain how we can do that, I'm going to quote at length from a man who knew Bucky very well. His name was Val John Ferris, and he spent years working for the Buckminster Fuller Institute in the role of event producer for Bucky's talks. And after hearing him speak about this hundreds of times, Val John Ferris created this 3-point list for how you too can be a trim tab. Quote, 1, move into the current. A trim tab moves directly into the current that opposes it. It actually uses opposition, adversity, and resistance to accomplish its goal. A trim tab relies on the forces pressing against it to leverage its power. Using opposition in this way is uncommon yet extremely powerful. What new possibilities might arise if you shift your mindset to embracing resistance instead of fighting it or ignoring it? 2, stay straight and true. A trim tab remains straight and true when the pressure is on to instead go with the flow. Its composition must be durable enough to withstand extreme opposition. Tin or copper is insufficient, but titanium better meets the challenge. How strong is your resolve? Can you stay true to your convictions in the face of pressure, or when others shun or judge you harshly? A trim tab stays firmly connected to its rudder, even in the roughest of seas. 3, full range of movement. A trim tab engages in a full range of movement. Although its composition is rigid, its hinges are flexible, and it is this freedom of movement that gives a trim tab its true power. If it were welded solidly to one side of the rudder, it would paralyze the ship and cause it to travel in predictable circles. Our rigidity and unwillingness to engage in a wide expanse of emotional experiences is like this and limits our growth and restricts our power. Unquote. So that was move into the current, stay straight and true, and maintain your full range of motion. This sounds deeply compatible with our UU values to me. And this is how we too can create cascading change for those values. And not only does this sound good, I see it actually happening all around me these days. I see it right here in the Loop project headed by Reverend Emily that seeks to discover new ways of being together in spiritual community. A project, by the way, that could use a few trim tabs from UUCB to continue its efforts. I've seen it in the cascading change that has come to the food and meat industry. When I was a kid, everyone ate meat, with the exception of a few people who stuck their feet out and refused and demanded better alternatives. They were made fun of and mocked for their choices, but stuck with them. Well, those are massive industries, and you don't change them overnight. But here we are in 2020, and the board looks really different. And this week, in fact, McDonald's announced they will soon be rolling out a meatless burger. And that's just one very big example of how people have absolutely begun to revolutionize what we are eating and how our food impacts our environment. I've seen it in the cascading change that has come to our energy production. Even just 2 decades ago, solar and wind remained difficult and expensive options, and oil and gas were setting up for a renaissance. But now I see more houses every day with solar, and wind and other renewables are at par, if not cheaper levels than oil and coal. Yes, we wanted this change overnight, but it took those early adopters who stuck their neck out and stuck with it and demanded something else to slowly exert enough pressure on the system to get us to the point we are at now. And what a cascading change that will bring to our Earth. And you know where else I recently saw a beautiful example of this cascading change? Stacey Abrams. In 2018, Miss Abrams lost a bitter fight to be governor of Georgia by a mere 55,000 votes to her Republican challenger, who in many ways had his finger on the scales. It would have been easy for her to lick her wounds in private, or to get a high-paying job consulting with her new big-name stature, or to conclude that the systemic racism in Georgia was simply too much for a woman of color to take on. But instead, she spent the next 2 years building a voter registration machine in Georgia that registered over 800,000 new voters and flipped the historically red state to blue for Biden by a mere 14,000 votes. If that is not a beautiful and life-giving cascade of change, I don't know what is. And yet, I get it. It is still easy to look with defeat and hopelessness at the way the playing field appears to be stacked towards the rich and powerful few. It's even understandable to be paralyzed by the enormity of the world's problems and to let yourself off the hook for having the possibility of little old you being able to exert enough pressure to change anything about the system that lumbers all around us. But as Bucky says, we must instead see ourselves as the trim tab. We must use our lives as pressure against the prevailing winds so that we can set in motion larger cascades of change around us. And so I beg you, put down your foot and drag this whole ship of state along with it. Yes, we can. May it be so. Ashe.
Our Share the Plate community nonprofit for November is Community Food Share, created in Boulder County in 1981. Community Food Share fights hunger in Boulder and Broomfield counties by providing access to fresh, nutritious food through local partners and through on-site and mobile pantries. Hunger is a reality for 1 in 9 people in Boulder and Broomfield counties. That means over 41,000 people, 9,000 of whom are children, are food insecure. Since the pandemic hit Colorado in March of this year, Community Food Share has distributed over 1 million pounds of food each month, the highest monthly totals in nearly 4 decades. These sadly record-breaking numbers are evidence that more and more of our community members are needing help. Community Food Share expects a 35% increase in demand for the food bank over the next months to come. Community Food Share accepts all sizes of food donations from a single bag to a box to a full truckload. With every dollar donated, Community Food Share can provide 3 meals, and 1 hour of volunteering results in 80 meals made available to people in our community. You can make a donation right now using the link posted in our chat or by sending a check to UUCB. Please be as generous as you can. We will now receive the offering. May our gifts be used to enact justice and bring peace and love to the Boulder community.
Okay. Thank you for that gorgeous music today. As we prepare our hearts and minds to return to the world, hear these words from my colleague, Reverend Kelly Asbruth Jackson. I send you out now to share yourself with the world. May its promise and complexity set your mind ablaze. May you hold fast to what your life has taught you. May you question everything. And when you have changed the world, and the world has changed you, may you return again to this place and share what you have learned with us. May it be so. Ashe.
Go your way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take, may love guide you on your way. Go your way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take, may love guide you on your way.
We invite you to stay with us in our Zoom rooms for a time of online fellowship and discussion. Barb and Fred are here to tell us how this is